Alright, what's going on, boys and girls? We're here with another reaction video. I know it's been a while since I've done one. Life's been a bitch. What do you want me to say? This particular one is called Nerd Wars, Windows versus Mac versus Linux. Just the name caught my attention, so I'm curious to see what Homeboy here has to say about it. Let's just roll into it. I'm hoping it's good.
Hey guys, just a quick vlog on the touchiness of nerds who are a little bit too touchy about technology. So a video I did just the day before or the day before that, depends when I publish this. Anyway, I did a video recently where I said that a lot of Mac people, some prominent Mac people, lifelong Mac users were switching over to Windows. And I went through reasons why, hardware inconsistency, etc., etc., etc. So, and I also pointed out in the video that I use Mac, I use Windows, I use Android, I use iOS. I've even used Linux in the past, very, very, very powerful Linux. But I don't use Linux these days simply because I use apps that are not available on Linux. So that's all. So the only reason I don't.
So the first thing I want to mention is, yes, nerds are touchy about their personal preferences. It's a weird thing. They're probably the most vocal about their shit next to gamers, but gamers and technology people tend to have that overlap. What I do like so far is the fact that Homeboy is not talking out of his ass. He's talking about, like, the reason he doesn't use Linux is because the application availability just isn't there for him. That's totally fine. There's no ideology for it. There's no nothing. It's just what it is. Personal computing. He's using computing and keeping it personal to his needs. And that's totally the way it should be. Not somebody force feeding you, this isn't Libre or free software, you're going to hell kind of crap that a lot of the FSF morons do, which ironically, because I comment on that, these jackasses are also going to be the ones commenting down in the comments below on a proprietary service. Hello, irony. Anyway, let's continue.
Don't use Linux. Linux is great as well if you have the software that you need to operate Linux with. Anyhow, that being said, I just want to comment on how one user below said, I forget the exact quote. I'll put a screenshot, but he basically unsubscribed from my channel because I dared to mention that Mac people were moving off of Mac onto Windows. Some prominent people. I don't have statistics. I don't know if it's a mass movement. I don't know if I'm not suggesting it's a mass.
All I'm going to say is then tell homie, nah, hey, goodbye, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, or you might have your head shoved up your ass while, you're walking out the door, so it might go kind of further out. If people are going to unsubscribe for having an opinion, well, then they don't really want a discussion or any type of engagement. They're just looking for vindication in their point of view.
It could be, I don't know. But I'm hearing it more and more and more. In fact, I just got back from a lunch with an old friend of mine. They're not in the tech business, but they've been using Macs for years. And I had mentioned this situation where somebody was so angry, but I just mentioned what I just mentioned about people moving from Mac to Windows. And they, to my surprise, they said they were thinking of dropping their Macs as well after many years because they found that the quality control or the consistency of quality is a better way of putting it, was lacking in the newer computers, and they're paying a premium. So they're looking at Windows machines. That said, they're not coders, they're not creative types, they're just using it for business only. So they're looking at Windows 10 based systems because of the things I just mentioned before in the previous video.
And I think that's totally fine that users are actually looking for what they need. As an example, be the first to tell you, I own a Mac. This is actually the late 2008 MacBook aluminum unibody. I will never, and I repeat the term, never, spend the amount of money Apple wants for their premium product. I like these weird things that Apple at one time provided called ports. So the fact that the inconsistency on the hardware is definitely there. The inconsistency on what is supported hardware is there. The only thing they're consistent on is their inconsistency. Butterfly switches on the keyboard much? They went backwards to get a better keyboard. Apple has lost the design end of things too. There are companies that are doing far better things on the design front than Apple as well. The Dell with the Infinity Edge display, it's freaking amazing. There are far better companies doing far better at Apple-esque things than the actual company that they're supposedly intimidating. I mean, you know what I mean. So, people getting mad over it, that's just dumb to me. But hey, whatever. That's kind of that's their prerogative.
So why am I talking about all this in this video? I think the larger point is that we have to look at all these things, operating systems, computer types, Macs, Windows, Android, iPhone, etc., Samsung, Google, Pixel, whatever. They're just tools, man. They're just tools. And just because somebody else prefers that tool over a tool that you prefer, it's not a political thing here. They're not affecting your life in any way if somebody uses Mac and you happen to be a Windows lover, or somebody's using Windows and you happen to be a Linux lover. Everybody's got different motivations. Everybody's got different sensibilities. Everybody's got different point of views or use cases.
Hence the term PC. Those use cases are personal reasons to use the computing style, the computing platform, the computing device that they decide to use. I got nothing to poo-poo on. Yes, I agree with homie. I don't know what he's going to say for another 3.5 minutes, but let's keep going.
So just because you think that Mac is the best, and for you, it's probably the best, doesn't mean it's the best for Windows users. So for instance, as a hobby and for this channel, I've been learning how to use cinema cameras properly so I can do pretty good video without having to bust my head. And for that, because of that, I check out what's going on in that world, watch reviews, etc. A little bit too much, perhaps, but that's another story. Anyhow, and what I notice is that for a lot of video editors, because they need to use Adobe, and because they want to use Adobe products, and because they find that they can get a far more powerful machine for a lot less money than on the Windows side versus the Mac side, because their focus is video, they're moving over to Windows machines strictly for video editing, even if they like Mac for other things.
You're talking on a professional level. This is just going by what I've seen personally, so take this with a grain of salt. People who are on Mac and did a lot of video editing with Final Cut and all the other stuff, there has been a lot of reasons to look at alternatives. The overpriced $60,000 for an actual decent rig. I mean, or was it $2,600 for a decent MacBook Pro, like the 16-inch one? Apple's pricing themselves at a premium, which they've always done, but there's a premium, then there's just are you fucking insane? I'm gonna go with the latter part. And so more people are looking for more bang for their buck, and like you mentioned, the hardware inconsistency. It took them 6 years to come out with a new Mac Pro. They killed off the 17-inch. It took them almost a decade to make a machine that was not shitty as far as a professional grade 16-inch MacBook. Sorry, MacBook Pro. But so people are looking at the alternatives because of those inconsistencies and price. but they're also looking at it. Apple's software is not as good as it used to be. There's still a lot of stuff that they do right, but if you look at how Apple operates, the one thing that they had for a long, long time was that integration. They got the most out of the hardware that they used, that optimization. Windows is attempts to be a general purpose OS. It tries to be a jack of all trades, master of none. So you can make it a master of whatever you want, but you have to put the primary focus on that task. Linux is the same deal. If appliance mentality, you can make it the best thing that it can be. Apple had optimizations for a long time in audio video content creation. They fell off because they weren't catering to content creators. People were building Hackintoshes. People were doing everything, but people were still buying 2009 Mac Pros, 2012 Mac Pros, the old cheese grater ones, just so they could have a decent Mac. So that's an Apple problem, not so much an end user problem. So that inconsistency and that lack of software polish is a lot of the reason a lot of people are looking elsewhere.
On the other hand, there are some Mac people, in terms of video editing, they like using Final Cut Pro. That is their app. And because that is their app and only runs on Mac, they're not going to switch off a Mac simply because of that app. And some of them will use Mac simply for video editing because they like Final Cut. And they'll use PCs for other things, and vice versa. There are some people who they like their Mac as their daily driver to answer emails, etc., 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 but they use PC to use Adobe products because Adobe works much better. Apparently, the Adobe video editing software, apparently, I haven't used it, but apparently it works much better on PC than it does on Mac. So they use PC just because they want to use Adobe. They don't like Final Cut. So everybody...
And I believe it was Snazzy Labs on YouTube. They're a very big YouTube channel that just recently built a DaVinci Resolve machine on Linux. So their editing is a Linux rig. That's kind of interesting to me. And they find it a better alternative and more stable and much more cost effective than spending $60,000 on a Mac Pro. Just saying. Best tool for the job.
Everybody's got their motivations. Everybody's got their reasoning. Sometimes it's just personal taste. Like a friend of mine, he loves BMW. I prefer Audi. I prefer the interiors of the Audi. I prefer the look of the Audis in the the D8 range. Anyway, I prefer Audis before the 2019, 2018 models in terms of the look and the aesthetic. But another friend of mine, they prefer two of these guys. They prefer BMWs. That's all they buy. I prefer Audi. We don't hate each other because we have different preferences in terms of vehicles. There may be a little bit of ribbing here and there, but it's not like, again, the tool that somebody else uses, if it's different from yours, has no impact on your life. It doesn't say anything negative about you. They're not insulting you. It's just an opinion, man. Who cares? And I'll leave it with this. Amazing software has been written on Linux, has been written on Windows, has been written on Mac OS. Yes, amazing software has been created on all three platforms. Amazing videos have been created on all three platforms. Amazing music has been created on all three platforms, I'm sure. So whatever is good for you, let's not get caught up in the politics of these silly things. It'd be, I think most people would say it would be kind of silly to watch plumbers argue over what wrench is the best wrench. So let's not do the same thing with computers. Just saying. All right, that's it for today. Bye-bye.
So I got nothing really to say. Homie's right. This isn't an ulcer-inducing video, guys. I hate to break it to you, but they're tools.
Around the world, there are so many mysterious...
Our job is to not be tools. Their job is to use computers as tools. So, to me, he's totally right. So, if someone is better off using Windows, or they're more comfortable in Windows, let them use Windows. If they're more comfortable in Mac OS, let them use Mac OS. If they're comfortable in Linux, let them use Linux, FreeBSD, Haiku, whatever. At the end of the day, it is their choice to the platform that they decide to use. You can help them attempt to go differently, but that's their choice to still try something different. You cannot force feed change. Change, especially on the level and the personal level of computing and how much of our lives go into it, be it from a smartphone to a laptop to a tablet to desktop, take your pick. That's a change that only the person using the computer can make, because it's a personal choice in their computing platform. That's what it really boils down to. So I actually really like this video. So Nerd Wars, yeah. Thumbs up. That's all I got.